everybody. Welcome to another Wiser Wednesday. Really excited today for this fireside chat with Tom Carter, so co-founder and CEO of Ultraleap. Great to see you here today, Tom. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, great. And you're just back from CES, is that right?
Yes, just back from CES, so still some sort of lingering remnants of CES flu, and nearly recovered, I guess, 2 weeks on. But yeah.
Yeah, no, all good because we had to postpone from last week. So, but that's great. Better to have you on form today. So, yeah, look, for people who don't know me, I'm James Potten. I believe in a world of entrepreneurial success without burnout. Just about got this sort of chart t-shirt to prove it. So we're framing this today, early in 2024, a year that will undoubtedly see, generative AI permeate our daily lives. And we're obviously seeing the further augmentation of kind of our reality in the virtual world. And, the Apple Vision Pro's out next month. So it's really timely to be speaking to you today, Tom. So be great to understand, we met, must have been, I think it was around like 2014, 2015, through a mutual friend. We did our my first kind of group coaching session together. So it was great to meet you in that sort of context. Let's tell us a bit about your story. What was, how did you begin this journey? And, let's start there and understand, I think also, just give us a bit of an intro to what Ultraleap is and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ultraleap is on a mission to remove the boundaries between the physical and the virtual worlds. So we want you, rather than interacting with computers by pressing keys over here to make something change over here, or tapping on a piece of glass where there's this whole 3D world on this side and you're kind of on the outside of the window tapping in. We want to remove those boundaries and we want you to be in direct contact with the 3D content and interact with your hands in the same way as you do in the virtual world.
Awesome.
So where this all started, I guess, was at university, the University of Bristol, where I started work on our haptic feedback technology, which uses sound waves to project the feeling of touch through the air. Actually just vibrates the surface of your skin and enables you to feel things that don't exist in the real world. And I started working on that actually as part of an undergrad project at university in my computer science degree, and then got to the end of that project and thought, I'd love to turn this into a company and build something around this. But the truth is it didn't really work at that point in time. So, it's a good idea and some initial bits of work. So then I went on a bit of a journey, enrolling to do a PhD, using the PhD to develop the tech to the point where it was ready, and then spun it out of the university right at the back end of 2013, formed the company, and then kind of have been growing from there. So not too long before we met, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, it's it's one of the really big success stories of a spin out from university. So yeah, how did you find that sort of that sort of journey? Did you find that you had quite a good kind of support network within the university to help you kind of push the idea forwards and to sort of commercialize it?
Yeah, I think there's a mixture of things when spinning out at this point in time. So there were a lot of people at the university who were super, super supportive, and I had a lot of help, both in terms of forming the business plan and helping apply for some initial grant funding from a couple of different opportunities that kind of helped get us going. There were also a lot of people saying, well, just slow down, take it slow, spend a bit more time at the university, continue to develop, you could still engage with companies, with customers as a group within the university. And I was hell bent on nope, we've got to get out, we've got to become a proper company, we've got to move fast, because I felt there's this sliding window. So actually kind of the way we ended up doing that, I entered a business plan competition at the university, won first place in that won me a nice little pot of money, which I then put into the company. The other two co-founders put some savings in as well, and then we just kind of jumped out of the university. Leaped. Yeah, I guess I should have got that in there. And then very much that sort of traditional jump off the cliff and then figure out how you're going to build the parachute as you go down.
Yeah.
So yeah, the spin out process there were plenty of challenges. I think we were the first company to spin out in quite a long time. So there was all sorts of logistical challenges of like some of the procedures and documentation needed updating within the university, which needed the Senate to sit, which only happens every X number of months and all this kind of stuff. So there was a lot of that kind of stuff to fight through, but I think we made it out in good shape by November. As I said, had this sort of like small pot of money to sustain us, and then jumped and tried to figure out what happens next as we hurtle towards the ground.
Yeah, yeah. I hope the parachute opens, and yeah, no, familiar story. So, and yeah, like having spoken to you in the past, you started that journey to sort of obviously build MVP and so on, but you had some interested like parties early on, and I think was it CES that you went out to? When was that you went out to sort of look? It was Vegas, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I guess sort of like the typical thing that everybody does when they start a company, right? You start the company, you get the first money in the bank account, and you immediately book plane tickets to Las Vegas. That's what we did.
To celebrate.
To celebrate, or it was genuinely really to meet customers, but it just happened to all be in Las Vegas. So yeah, we had some initial interest as we were spinning the company out, both from investors, from potential customers, from the press. So that kind of gave us confidence that, okay, there's something here. But like the haptics technology that we had, it's an interface technology. So you can apply it to a lot of different use cases and applications. And we kind of sat there thinking, okay, how do we figure out what do we do? Do we try and be everything to everybody? Do we try and specialize? Do we focus on certain markets? We're like, okay, well, the thing we need to do is we just need to talk to lots of people. So we booked tickets to go to Vegas to attend CES, which is the biggest consumer tech show in the world. But we didn't actually pay for tickets to go to CES. We just kind of squatted in a hotel room just to the side of the show. There was like the three founders. We would sleep in the hotel room, wake up in the morning, tidy everything up, set it up for meetings, and then do meetings during the day. I arranged all of those meetings there was a plugin for Gmail called Reportive that when you were emailing somebody, it pulls up their LinkedIn profile.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I would just guess people's email addresses, just type it in, and then when the LinkedIn profile pops up, oh, that's their email address. So I emailed like CEOs of big companies thinking they're never going to read it, they're never going to reply, but you've got to try. What have I got to lose? And all but one of those led to a meeting.
Wow.
We had like many of the biggest companies in the world. We had Palmer Luckey, who just won Best in Show at CES for the Oculus Rift, which had just appeared. He came, loads of people came, and all came sort of off the beaten track, came and found us in our hotel room, and we had a lot of really good meetings. And off the back of that, we also had an investor attended to sort of help us out a little on the sort of the commercial part of the meetings, but also gauge whether there was genuinely interest for this tech. And that all resulted in him putting some money into the company. And well, everybody that we met said, oh, this is amazing. Can I have one? Can I have one of those demos and take it back into my lab? And the truth was we had one in the entire world. It started working. The demo worked for the first time 45 minutes before the first meeting. The glue on the box dried in the overhead locker on the way out, all that kind of stuff. And everybody was like, can I have one? We were like, absolutely, we just need to do the manufacturing run. So then after that, we spent several months building our evaluation kit and proper software package and everything before starting to sell that. So yeah.
And you have like an interesting, like quite a funny story, and like every founder has one about the direction of like the so yeah, you basically worked out that was that at university, or was that once you spun out? Where was the realization about? Maybe explain it so people.
The sort of direction.
Yeah.
So I guess like
on the actual the components, you had them in the wrong way around, so they were countering each other.
Yeah. That was at university, yeah. So I said I did my undergrad degree working on this stuff, and well, I did okay in my degree, so I guess I wrote a very good report. But the actual thing I built didn't actually work. So it was supposed to give you tactile feedback. You couldn't feel anything. but it was generating some force, and it was enough. So I sort of have this device pointing upwards that you're supposed to be able to feel. I spent whatever it was, 8 months trying to make it work, couldn't make it work.
Yeah.
Eventually turned it sideways, and I used it to push a little ball across a screen. So like computer monitor down, these devices around the edge. And I created a game of Pong where you could use a games controller to move a virtual paddle, and then the ball would bounce off them and you could play against the
That's cool.
computer. So it was very much a sort of a startup pivot, but for for a research project. Then carried on doing a PhD, thinking you must be able to figure out how to actually make. If you can move a ball, you must be able to feel it. You just need more force or something like that. Anyway, turns out with the little speakers we use like an array of little speakers that emit ultrasound, sound that's too high frequency for you to hear. And turns out those have polarity, which means you need to wire them the right way round. And if you wire one way and one the other way, rather than adding together, they cancel each other out and you get nothing. And they have markings on them, but they did not relate at all to the polarity. So everything was random. It was all canceling each other out. Hence, no matter how much I tried to debug it, it just did nothing. We figured that out, then turned them the right way around. Suddenly, oh, amazing, you have this incredible haptic tech. And then we were able to sort of well, that's fairly early in the PhD, the sort of big eureka moment. But then after that meant
that moment. Do you remember, like, who you were with, like, because that's the kind of, that is just such an important.
Yeah, I was with one of our co-founders, Ben, in the lab, and we sort of had that idea of, but the marking's definitely correct, right? And then you sort of go and start measuring them and like testing them with a microphone, and then you realize, oh no, it's not, and then quickly run and sort of wire an array up with them all the right way around, and it works. And you're like, whoa, okay, it's like suddenly this idea has legs, and we're not just going to have to kind of give up and go do something else with our lives.
Champagne moment. Did you? Who did you message?
We couldn't afford champagne back then, but yeah, we probably.
Prosecco.
Maybe we got a Coca-Cola from the vending machine. But the run on from there is, once we knew that, we still had to mark them all by hand and do the measurements. And then even when we became a company, eventually we got the manufacturer to sell us. They sell us like a special part with the polarity actually marked on them properly. But there was a good chunk of time where that didn't exist, and we have 40,000 speakers which have been hand tested and marked, which takes a long time, done by me, the other early employees, my mother-in-law.
How many did you say?
40,000. Yeah. I had a CEO near the beginning of the company, his wife. Like, we had a bit of an army come to bear to do these things so that we could like ship products to customers. But yeah, that's kind of what amazing. You do.
Great. No, I like, yeah, that's the point in time, and you'll never forget it, that you went from going, this is just an idea, to this is actually reality. And that's amazing. So well done for working that out. It's most discoveries are sort of to some extent by accident, aren't they? So and you just said something interesting there. So you said early on you had a CEO. Can you talk us through, because that's a really interesting, in the world that I see a lot of founders put themselves into the CEO role sort of straight away. So and that is, it's a really tough gig, right? You know that now from being in it. So what was the thought process early on for that decision?
Yeah, so I think it depends on your character and what you're good at and what you want to do, really. So for me, I wanted to stay really close to the technology, because I thought that what we had when we spun out of university wasn't good enough. There were a lot of big problems to solve, and I wanted to kind of not get pulled too far away from that and make sure we solved those key problems so that we could succeed as a company. I wanted to move really fast. I really felt like we had a window of time in which to succeed. I think the reality has been that window was actually longer than I expected, but I thought it was really short. You had the tech coming on the market that enables you to track your body in your hands. There was the Kinect for the Xbox, which you jump up and down in your living room. There was the Leap motion controller, obviously like Leap Motion is now part of Ultraleap, but I was
Yeah, yeah.
working with David, the
I
founder
had
of
one of
Leap
those
Motion.
on my Mac.
That's super, super cool, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, okay, there's this moment now where suddenly people are starting to control their computers by moving their hands in the air, and you're lacking that tactile feedback. And if we don't strike now and get this haptics technology out there, then there's a chance that the sort of the hype dies off and that kind of that moment in time passes and our opportunity disappears. So I wanted to move really, really fast and figured like the way to do that is not with me constantly standing on rakes, not knowing what I'm doing, figuring things out as I go, but to have somebody who has experience of running a company come in, take on the CEO role, and also a little bit of an understanding of myself that having gone through university and PhD and spent time with different people in different environments, that the way that I learn best is by kind of being with really smart people that I can watch and observe and be like, how do you do that? And then kind of like absorb their knowledge, if you like some kind of vampire, I guess. So
Osmosis. Yeah.
yeah, so that was the thinking was, okay, right, let's hire in a CEO. I'll become the CTO and focus on the technology, and then we can kind of like run the company together in that dynamic. So I had a mentor. He introduced me to 5 or 6 different people that were sort of potential candidates for the job. I met a bunch of them. One of them, I just like resonated with and kicked off. So then I effectively gave him a year-long interview because we would kind of we'd spend evenings and weekends together refining the business plan, and then I would like run the company during the day. And then about a year after founding the company, we closed our seed round, and at that point he came and joined because like we could pay him a salary, and
Yeah.
we kind of took it from there.
No, that's great to hear, and like really, yeah. Look, I think it's, I'm I'm so impressed that you like recognize that in yourself, and that that's the sort of decision you made to like give this the best sort of opportunity at the start to take it on the journey, and you know, and 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 not only has it like worked, it's allowed it's allowed you to like develop and like to be the CEO that you are now. So it's so good, you know. And I think there'll be a lot of like startup founders out there that assume that they have to be the CEO, like assume that they have to like step into that position. And it is really tricky, a really tricky space. So yeah, look, so you did your seed round. What was the journey to sort of Series A? Like, where, because you've raised over 120 mil now, right? That's amazing.
Yeah.
What was that? What was it like getting to Series A? What was the
Yeah, so I guess the seed round, we raised that off the back of we had our first paying customers. We had like a very big automotive company, a very big consumer electronics company, and yeah, another very big consumer electronics company paying us money for our tech for sort of the evaluation kits and for us doing some custom development work for them. And that was kind of the basis of which we raised the seed round. The journey to Series A was then really about commercial milestones. So it was about taking, a small handful of customers, showing that they're interested enough to part with a material amount of cash, to a more extensive pipeline, more focused on what are our target markets, what's the business model of how we're really going to scale this. We'd really sort of worked that through. We'd seen those early seed customers and more start progressing through the pipeline, not to anybody actually shipping a product yet, but we had some good development contracts, we had some good customers in the roadmap, and then just a good funnel of customers coming in and buying the kits. So just generally growth in commercial traction. There was a big question around our Series A round of, should we move the company? Like, we're headquartered in Bristol in the UK. Should we move to London? Or the bigger question really, should we move to California?
yeah,
Like that was a big question for our Series A, and ultimately there were kind of two pieces to that. Can we get customers from where we are in the UK? The answer to that was yes. We just need to spend enough time on planes, and then that works out.
yeah,
And question 2 was, not just can we raise enough money? Can we raise a Series A round in the UK? But can we raise the right type of investment? And we very much saw ourselves as, what we do is it's deep tech, so you need enough money and enough time to become successful. So we really needed to raise like patient capital, like money from investors that don't have a short fund window where they're going to come and try and exit you
Mm,
in a few years' time.
yeah.
And we managed to do that, and that was really kind of the moment we sort of like solidified that we're going to stay in the UK and grow the headquarters here. So
No, awesome. And was it at that stage, because you've kind of got like three core sectors, haven't you? Had that started to form at that stage? The maybe just like, yeah, let people know what those sectors
yeah,
are.
we yeah, not they were not the same three as now. So automotive was there and well established. Um, we we were not doing anything, oddly enough, in virtual reality at that point. It was very early in the virtual reality industry. I think even by our Series A, generally people were still interacting with headsets. You buy the headset and then you get an Xbox controller and you'd use the Xbox controller. So most of the experiences were kind of like sticking a goldfish bowl on and then kind of looking around and moving with an Xbox controller. So we
Yeah.
didn't um we kind of saw like there's potentially a really good fit there, but we didn't really understand or couldn't figure out exactly how do we tie into that industry, what's the business model that's going to work for us. So we weren't doing anything in that. We were looking more at some other, had like early traction in some other industries, like some consumer electronics products, some sort of like smart home or sort of whatever you call them, machines that you use in your house, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but auto was the big focus, and then we kind of really bought in virtual reality in our Series B. The Series B raise was basically, right, we figured out our play in VR now. Here's what we're going to do, and here's the money we need to go and execute that.
Amazing. And then, so obviously you guys were Ultra Haptics when you set out. When did the sort of Magic Leap sort of connection? What series and I guess what year? When was that sort of happening?
Yeah, so 2019 was the year, May 2019. Um, so as I said, we'd worked with Leap Motion for like longer than Ultra Haptics existed. They'd always had the best hand tracking in the world, and our two technologies complemented each other really well. And it kind of got to the point where we were starting to think, we really need these two roadmaps to be tightly aligned because um, you have things like, if on the hand tracking side you're prioritizing accuracy of motion over accuracy of position, so making sure that the relative change is highly accurate at the expense of exactly where is this fingertip,
Mm,
then that's bad for the haptics, because if you're going to try and target haptics onto a fingertip, you might miss the fingertip because it's not actually where you think it is. So there's little things like that where like the input and the output, it's really important that they're kind of tightly coupled. And around this time, I was talking to David in between as we kind of hatched this plan to bring the two companies together, and that actually, ultimately resulted in Ultra Haptics acquiring Leap Motion. We brought the two companies together, and then we did a rebrand because kind of like the names don't really make sense. So conveniently, we were able to kind of pretty quickly sit down and be like, "What's the favorite part of your name?" Leap. Okay, what's the favorite part of your name? Ultra. Okay, how about we just do this? Oh yeah, that's really nice. So it was like, I guess, easy to concoct rebrand, and
that's,
then we had to roll it out. So
that's good to hear. Having been through like a few mergers and acquisitions, I mean they're not easy. There's a
mm,
whenever we've looked or done it in the past, I've always looked at the values of the two organizations and tried to understand, is there going to be, if we try to like bring these two sort of groups together, there's always going to be sort of subcultures within the cultures of those two organizations, but like
mm.
actually trying to dovetail and not just systems but the way people think and work is a real challenge. How did you make that a success?
Yeah, I mean, I think we had a good starting point in that I think there was a large amount of cultural overlap between the two companies, and we were both kind of hacky startups trying to figure out similar challenges. There's so many things we'd both looked at from a different angle, and things that we'd done together in the past. So there was a bunch of commonality, but there's also a whole bunch of differences, right? I think you're going to get that even if you took two companies that kind of almost look the same from the outside, and that's hard, right? You're kind of fusing two cultures together and trying to figure out, for each thing that is different, which one do you pick to keep, or do you pick something different entirely for the combined entity? And yeah, even with people who really like each other and are not that far misaligned, that's still really hard work, right? It's labor intensive, it's tiring, it's a lot of things that mean something to people, to humans. So I think ultimately it involves a lot of talking and a lot of being open, being candid, and just spending time trying to understand and trying to work through and trying to figure out how you kind of like merge those things together. And then also a little element of just being patient. I've heard of other companies that have done, um, I might get this wrong, but I think it was Flex. I think Flex, who are like Flexport, they acquire a lot of companies. And I've heard stories of whether it's them or somebody else, somebody similar. Their CEO does this session where after they've done an acquisition, they go in and meet, have an all hands, and they spend like half an hour asking that company to explain their culture, and really goes into details of what they like about it and everything else. And then he goes, right, well, that's gone and it's never coming back. Here is the culture of our company. This is now what you're part of. And just as a really hard slam.
Wow.
For some organizations, I can imagine that working. For what we wanted to do was very much about trying to get the benefits of both sides and trying to always figure out like what have we learned and what can we improve. And I think for that you got to keep working at it, and you've also got to be patient. Like it takes time, so don't overly force it. Like be kind to people and just keep working on it over time, and then you get to a really good point after a while.
Yeah. I know. I mean, it's yeah, well done. Like I think, like especially as you get more senior within like the organizations, when you bring in MDs from like other companies, and then they take on roles within your board, that can be really tricky when they've been used to being like the MD. That is something I've certainly found quite hard. But yeah, and like product wise, if you kind of, yeah, maybe don't share it if you don't want to, but if you kind of kept two sort of product teams, but like have a lot of cross kind of collaboration, or
Yeah, no, we've brought the teams together. So like from there was a bunch of areas of overlap where we kind of if you tried the two companies separate, then you end up with like duplication of effort. So we tried to fuse those together, and then also uh, yeah, there's just a bunch of pieces where if we're going to deliver a product together, there were skills that existed in one of the companies or the other that didn't in the other, and we kind of need to like connect those up in how we deliver products. So everything is entirely unified. We have one engineering team that take things end to end from like ideation right through to shipping products. And I mean, we kind of started pretty early on with right. Let's kind of let, what if we just rebuilt everything from the ground up? So like all of the platform code, we delivered V5 of the hand tracking Gemini, which the Leap Motion team had already made like substantial progress on before the merger, but there's still a huge amount of lifting there, and that was like a pretty substantial rebuild of the core technology. We did all of the platform rebuild, the sort of camera hardware and everything. So that process in many ways of kind of turning over everything you've got and kind of going back to the beginning, kind of rebuilding and improving and setting up for what we wanted to do as the new company going forwards, and kind of like enabling that forward momentum was actually very helpful, because again, I think while you're trying to bring people together, if they've got a mission and like a hard task that we're all trying to achieve together, then that's often a helpful thing. Get people working together, and they start building up experience, which is good.
Yeah, and so not only sort of different kind of products trying to merge together, different time zones as well. That's I mean that again, just as you're closing your
Yeah.
laptop, everyone else is getting the other side of the pond's getting up. So
Yeah, the whole UK California thing is not easy. It's lots of things happening in the evening. Luckily, I mean the team we've got are brilliant, so we really try and maximize what are effectively the crossover hours, sort of late afternoon, evening UK, early morning, sort of in California. We try and maximize those. We have some teams where the actual team themselves is split between UK and California, where the team will shift their hours on some days and kind of work California hours. So you try and come up with different routes, and again, just try and be super flexible with like have some common rules that work for everybody, and then try and be super flexible with individuals as they're trying to fit things in and around their work life and their home life and kind of what works for them. And then, of course, you add in Asia as well. We have people out in China and Japan and plenty of customers in Asia these days. So as much as possible, we try to, particularly if we're engineering or building products, we'll try to keep people on one side or the other of the planet and try and protect their concentration as much as possible.
the sun
Then,
never
like
sets
sometimes
on Ultraleap path. So.
yeah, sometimes you need to be on calls in the morning, then do a day, and then calls later. That is sometimes inevitable, but you try and sort of like shape it in a way that works. And I have this big thing. I can't remember where I heard it first. It might have even been Naval, who the AngelList guy, who's I don't know, a bit of a philosopher on these kind of things. I think he had a phrase "work like a lion," which I quite like, and I've sort of tried to like the Ultraleapers have heard me talk about this a lot, and the concept of work like a lion is if you try, you ultimately want to work in a way that is sustainable. If you try to therefore just sit on a perfectly sustainable line forever, then you're gonna miss the gazelle, right? So if the lion's like, I want to be sustainable, I'm never going to get tired, then it's never going to catch a gazelle. So what the lion does is when there's a gazelle and it's hungry, it works really, really hard. It goes and chases, it hunts, and it gets the gazelle. Then it eats. Then it spends most of its time sleeping under a tree. So
Oh.
it's like we want everybody to work in a sustainable way. We don't want everybody kind of like grinding themselves down. But we want to do it with this like mentality of if there's something to hunt and win, go and hunt and win that. And then when there's kind of more peaceful times, make sure you kind of like use that to recover, take it easy, take a bit more time, whatever you need to kind of get back to the level.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say 'cause we were just chatting before. We've both got young families. It's much harder, isn't it, to get the sort of the sleeps in, and how are you managing that? I mean, yeah, sleep deprivation is real for me right now. So
Yes. Do you know when my daughter was born, I actually found it not quite as bad as I was expecting because I was like, this is kind of like jet lag. It's kind of like flying around a lot. You end up kind of
you were used
tired,
to that
sleep's a bit
already.
messed up. And I was like, okay, I'm kind of like somewhat familiar with this. But then I realized I think we had it relatively easy in the early days, and then it definitely got harder. So yeah, it's hard work, and you in trying to fuse that. You know, a job that's very demanding with then trying to spend as much time with my daughter as possible and,
Mm.
play with her and give her lots of attention with then also trying to like give my wife a break wherever possible and spend some time with her as well. You try and stitch all those
Yeah,
things together and it's kind of impossible to do everything that you want, but um, again, just trying to like keep conscious of that and proactively say right no now I'm going to carve out times for these things. We have California, so I guess I've kind of shifted my evening calls later so that I can come home and have dinner
exactly.
with her and spend some time and do bath time and bedtime and then be like okay right now I need to go and like do a couple of calls to California and things like this. So you just try and throw things up in the air and try and rearrange them in a way that fits. But
Yeah. Well, look, well done. I mean, it is, you know, so I talk about like what it's like scaling companies, like, you know, we're quite a lot of CEOs, and I am, it's so I can't describe how different it is trying to build a business with a young family. It's just, I mean, you know, it's a completely different, like, you know, niche, or like you have to have completely different like mindset, because you can't.
yeah,
The key thing is you can't make up the time that you would have, because normally stuff doesn't go to plan in the day. You make it up in the evening, and then you're back to
yeah,
where you want to be the next day. Maybe I don't like to work at like weekends, but you know, was happy to put in the hours in the weekdays. But yeah, you don't have it like that. That time's not there, and it's so you have to become like super efficient, or, you know, or good at delegating. And like what you've just talked about is intentionally setting out with, this is, you know, this is when I am available. You have to basically be really boundary, don't you, and say, you know, this is blocked out, I'm available this side and this side. But you basically have to be really clear with your boundaries, and intentionally set that in the first instance.
yeah. It's a good forcing function as well to get, I guess, more efficient, faster at making decisions, like quicker at delegating, just anything that you may have, you know, however you sort of organize yourself, you need to do that faster and better. And so sometimes those kind of forcing functions can be helpful. And then, as you say, having rules and figuring out when there's always infinite things asking for your time. So just because something's asking for your time and you haven't got to it doesn't mean you should necessarily do it. You have to say no to more things, and then getting good at knowing, okay, what are the really important things where, yeah, got to flex, got to find out a way of making this happen. What are the things that's like, yeah, you know, that would be nice, but it's not essential. So that just has to
We could
sit and
dive
wait.
into some like models here, but yeah, I mean, I've just finished like 4,000 weeks, and I think that, I don't know if you've read that, but
I
we've
haven't
got
know.
4,000 weeks on the planet
Right.
basically. The key takeaway from that, and a bit of an aha moment, is the to-do list will never, you know, be
Mm-hmm.
done. So stop trying, stop fooling yourself. Um, I've always liked like Eisenhower, so trying to like prioritize important over urgent
Mm-hmm.
is like an amazing like technique. And I guess the bit that you're kind of alluding to there, like with the delegation, is I quite like the Amazon model, which is what, you know, there's some decisions that are like sort of type 1 and type 2 sort of decisions. Type 1 are reversible, type 2 are reversible. So it's about like really only getting involved with type 1 decisions in the business. So
Yeah, and aiming to make those decisions when when you have 70% of the information you need. Don't wait for 100%. Just,
yeah.
it's 70%, and if you've got 70% and it's reversible, go for it, and then watch what happens and see if you see if that was the right decision or not. You can always change your mind. So
Have you got any other models, or any models that you particularly sort of like using?
you said about the to do list. You'll never complete it. You never finished. No one's ever
No one's ever
completed
won
to
that game.
dos. That was a big switching point for me. It was I like the getting things done methodology. David Allen. That was one of the key things he has in there. It's like the to do list will never be done. So he has this sort of phrase, mind like water, which is like stop holding things in your head, stop stressing about them. Like there's always going to be more things on the to do list. And I think that the GTD approach, the core of it is still brilliant, and I still use it. Some of it doesn't really work anymore. It has these kind of like contexts for which location you're in. The reality is, if you've got an iPhone, you can probably do like 95% of the things on your list wherever you are in the world. But the like some of the concepts of be okay never getting to the end of the list because you're never going to, and doing just like a weekly review, just so you're kind of like just sitting down once a week and going, okay, what is all the stuff I've got to do? Like resorting through the things you kind of chucked on there during the week, or emails that came in that you're like, I need to do that when I have some time. And then you're never going to be able to do everything, but then you at least know that you're starting with the most important thing and working down. So you know you kind of have confidence you're working on the biggest fires, and you kind of like just get comfortable. There's going to be some fires that just burn, but they're the small ones, so that's okay. You're dealing with the biggest ones, so
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
No, look, that's good. That's yeah, really interesting to hear like your approach and like yeah, like the a business is not scalable if you are if everything needs you in it. So being able to delegate, know that you've got team members that step up and do it and own it. That accountability piece is key. In previous organizations, for me, like OKRs has been the point at which that has made all the difference because the objective gets people out of bed and the KR is a bit more like a to-do list, but it's I just find that works. That's the best way, and you can cascade it from a primary vision, and that's when you can really you can sleep well at night because you can start to see what what is and isn't working across your organization if you've got the right reporting from it. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Also a fan of OKRs. Yeah, we use them here and have kind of like a cascade down where yeah, annual OKRs, quarterly OKRs, and then for all the product development, we plan that in phases, which is 6 weeks, so kind of like half a quarter, and then 2 week sprints. So you kind of get this big cascade down from what we're doing in the year right down to what the teams are doing every 2 week sprint. So that works nicely and just kind of gives you the right graduation when you want to sit back and look at like where are we going again. You can kind of like zoom out to whatever level you need to.
Yeah, no, great. Hey, look, Tom. You're so level-headed, like, and yet you're on a rocket ship at the moment. Like, what you talked about having a mentor. Like, is that something that you still do? Do you still like have people around you that can help you? How we think is probably mindset is such an important part of leadership, isn't it? So yeah, is that something you still sort of do? And
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm lucky that I've got good mentors attached to the company, both kind of on our board that I get to talk to and spend a lot of time with, and then also some sort of like helpful people with good industry backgrounds that I can call on. I also work with a coach regularly, just having um, that person. Again, I've got a great team inside the company who like have a lot of experience in their different domains and in like some amazing companies that they've worked for in the past that I personally can learn a lot from them while we're going, but it's also tremendously helpful just to have somebody who's entirely independent and like their only interest is you, and you can just sort of work through problems and ideas with them. I've actually recently also started using ChatGPT for that. When you can kind of like, I think that's actually one of the best uses of ChatGPT is I
yeah,
use the GPT builder kind of been tuning one up to be effectively kind of like a business coach. It's not as good as having a human business coach, but when you're just trying to like you've got 10 minutes and you're trying to think something through, then being able to like have a conversation there is actually like really useful as just like an on-demand like basic sanity checking kind of approach. And then yeah, just kind of putting that mixture together is a good thing.
yeah. I mean, a massive fan of ChatGPT. Like, I've just recently been using the actual conversation piece, so or functionality. That is it's it's uncanny valley. It's amazing. It's that it's amazing what you're literally like having a conversation and sort of bouncing back and forth ideas with it basically, and
Yep.
it's amazing. You know and we're still kind of at the start of all this sort of stuff, so it's scary how powerful that is. So really pleased you brought that up, and hopefully others think about how they could like use that or have that in their sort of self sort of reflection part of their day. So we've kind of walked through quite a journey. We haven't quite got to Series D yet. So that was that 2021. So that was the biggest raise yet. So just talk us through
Yes.
talk us through that. And yeah, it's I mean there's only a certain number of people on the planet who kind of get to Series D. So congratulations. How did you get there?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm a big believer that raising money and getting to later rounds is all in the aim of funding the product development. Like that, so the I was definitely guilty of this in the beginning. When you look at people who've raised huge amounts of money and being like, "Well, look how much money they raised." The key thing is what products have they built and who's using it. That's the cool thing. The money is just a vehicle to get there. So
Yeah,
ultimately, kind of how we got to Series D was by building good products and you know creating good deals with customers that enabled them to ship to themselves ship awesome products. So I guess really the sort of the jump there was the Leap Motion coming on board and rebranding to Ultraleap happened between the Series C and Series D. So effectively, what we've done by Series D is expanded to include hand tracking, done a bit of a rebrand. We had done some deals. I think Vario was the first company to ship hand tracking integrated into their headset. We did that deal very, very quickly following sort of May 2019 for kind of Leap Motion coming on board, and then that headset was announced before the end of the year. So that was a really fast journey, and yeah, it was just kind of like that continuing expansion as a company and customer progress, revenue progress that then leads to us going out and raising the Series D. That was led by Tencent, so we had sort of strategics coming on board there as well as the other mix of investors that we already had, and yeah, kind of the goal was really to give us the funding to um, power our plans and sort of like the next growth journey of the company. I will say that it also looks great. We went out and raised this money. It was sort of 2021, and we started going out and trying to raise the money beginning of 2020. And I actually was on a plane. I was in Japan and South Korea, having very early investor meetings. We were just starting to think about going out and raising, and it was absolutely terrified on that trip because Japan had 4 cases of COVID and Korea had 4 cases when I landed and 400 cases when I took off 36 hours later.
wow.
And we're like, whoa, narrow escape. Safe to say, back in the UK, sort of 10 days later, South Korea and Japan looked like, you know, an oasis in the world, and the UK was far, far worse in terms of COVID cases. And then
Yeah,
trying to raise money remotely for technology that you kind of have to feel to understand what it really is pretty challenging. So we kind of like pressed pause on the funding round and let the pandemic settle down a bit before we went back to it and tried to do the raise. So yeah, fun
yeah,
times.
yeah. No, I mean, it's still weird. Like maybe it's about the timing of when it happened and how long you need, to really consider what happened. It's only recently that, it's weird when you talk about it. When I've had a few conversations down the pub recently, and we're talking about how crazy, like 2020, 2021 was. It seems
Yeah,
like it's something that didn't happen because it was when you think about that
seems
time.
so
Anyway,
abnormal.
yeah, yeah. So and now we mentioned it at the start. You've got the Apple Vision Pro coming out. So I guess what next? What does this mean for you? And what does 2024? You've just had your 10-year party, I guess, in 2023.
Yes.
So what does
Yep.
what
Yeah.
does
No,
the
we
next
we
10
turned
years?
turn
10 months and
turn
10
10 back
years.
in
What's going to
November.
happen?
So I think in many ways up to this point, the virtual reality, augmented reality industry has been somewhat niche and trying to figure out its footing. So there's a clear consumer use case, but the software hasn't really been kind of good enough for people to be able to just sort of pick up a headset and use it as easily as a smartphone. One of the key things there is you have to learn the controllers. The different hands have different buttons. You can't see them when you have the headset on. it's harder than with a games console to sort of learn the controls, and then you're doing something that's slightly unnatural. And then just the software has been a bit of a challenge. There's very, very clear like high value in the enterprise use cases, so that's been growing nicely. You have companies like Lufthansa use our hand tracking. They've trained 20,000 air cabin crew. So if anybody goes and gets on a Lufthansa flight, your air cabin crew will have been trained using our tech, which is awesome. But even then, you're still in like a relatively small niche in the world. I think the thing that changes with Apple entering the market is it brings a huge amount of consumer attention. It's going to bring a lot of developers to virtual reality, augmented reality, or spatial interaction, as they're calling it. And they've really figured out some of the software layer pieces as well. And I think we'll see a lot of companies who've kind of, to some extent, been waiting for Apple to appear and see what they do, are going to take heavy inspiration from what they've done, and you'll kind of get a bit more of like a unified approach to how to use headsets, which I think, so all of those forces are going to be super helpful. The other thing for us, Apple has launched their headset in its hands first. There are no controllers. You use your hands to interact with everything. You kind of like look at things and then pinch to click. And two things that we're very good at. One is enabling you to interact with complicated 3D shapes and objects if there are virtual stuff in your environment. I think that's something that, version 1 of the Apple Vision Pro, most of the interfaces are 2Ds. They're kind of transitioning you over to this type of computing, a little bit like the first iPhone. The Notes app was like lined paper with like a spiral at the top and things like this. So they're doing that same kind of transition. As it gets more 3D, it's going to need better and better hand tracking. That's kind of what we have. And then also this push that you're going to be wearing these devices for long periods of time. So you need to not be using controllers. You want to use your hands, but you also, we've been sat here having a conversation for the last hour. We like wave our arms in the air to gesticulate, but you spend a lot of the time with your arms down, right? Resting and then in a comfortable position. You're going to need to be able to do that. And so the other thing that we're kind of like bringing to our customers is what we call micro gestures. So really small, fine movements you can do with your hands that you can do from like a lazy position. So, for example, if you're going to be doom scrolling on social media, you can just move your thumb along your forefinger in a way that's sort of even more comfortable than holding an iPhone and doing this kind of scrolling move. You can feel your thumb and forefinger against each other. We're the only people who can track that down to that level of accuracy that you can use that, and then you can kind of just sit back and scroll and do these like little interactions. So I think that's kind of what we're going to see. A lot more consumer interest, a lot more content, kind of like the early days of the iPhone where people were creating wild and wacky apps, like a lot of experimentation and like a settling over the next sort of 12, 18 months on what are the best little interaction tricks and approaches. I'm really excited. Things like the hamburger icon on your phone, the sort of three little lines that reveals the menu. That was invented by an app developer. After like 2 generations of the iPhone, somebody came up with that, put it in their app. Everybody was like, "That's a great idea," and now it's just like default for everybody. I'm kind of excited to discover those as people are trying to figure that out with hands and in virtual content. So
Amazing.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
No, really exciting. And yeah, as you say, that it's a sort of confluence of technologies, and there's kind of this element of it took a while to realize the importance of augmented, didn't it? Because we started going down the VR. The initial thing was VR, and then you sort of realize actually augmented there's something quite special about still being in our world, but overlaying it. And anyway, there's some super cool things coming down the line. So like going right back to when you were doing your at university, if someone was in your position right now, what advice would you give them, having been on this journey for the last 10 plus years?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I guess the first thing, if you're going right back to when I was at university, the first thing I'd say is do it, like make the jump, because I was having those conversations at that time. Like I had a job offer, I just hadn't signed the contract yet to go and work for a software development consultancy. And the idea that instead of doing that, I'm going to go and do a PhD and try and build a company, it sounds super risky. It's not what any of my friends are doing. It's, it sounds, you can easily convince yourself, well, that's a bad idea. But I did it and took the jump. And I would say to, anybody else who's in that same position and kind of thinking about it, I'd definitely encourage taking the jump. I think doing this, I've not seen any other way to learn as fast as you do when you try and like I say, jump off a cliff and figure out how to build your parachute. It puts you, it's plenty of pressure, plenty of stress, but it kind of opens doors, gets you access to information, gets you experiences you can't get away, and you just learn super fast. So I think after starting the company, at any point in time, had the company imploded or failed or not worked, I think I would have been in a better position for me personally in terms of my growth and also kind of my ability to then go and have a career doing something else if I decided that maybe entrepreneurship was not the thing. I'd have been in a better position doing that. And then the other thing I'd say is it's just as effectively as you can try and figure out how to get fast feedback. I said we jumped on a plane and went to Vegas straight away because we just wanted to put this in front of lots of people and listen to what they said about it. Some, like plenty of founders these days, create software, it's an app or a website, you can put it out and you can immediately track stats and data and things like that. And there's a lot of information out there on how to do that. If you're doing like a deep tech company, you can't do that. Like I can't just magically enable everybody to have expensive hardware systems on day one. So it's really about getting creative and trying to figure out, okay, how do we get this into the hands of as many people as possible? And how do we make sure they don't just disappear into their own lab, but they're actually giving us feedback and we're talking to them and we're getting information. So, I think that's important things.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Well, look, I really enjoyed the conversation today, and it's been great tracking your sort of journey, and really appreciate you sharing that with us. Long may it last, and often talk about sort of exponential technologies, but it feels like we may only be 1% through at the moment. That next stage is when you get the other 99%. So really excited for what that means for you and your team. So look. So there you have it. Let's make sure we take the leap, and you're going to step on rakes. So I love that saying. It's it's constantly stepping on rakes in the startup world. Work like a lion, and I hope if you're listening, you feel like you can go out there. If you've got an idea, get out there and go. The best way to learn about yourself is to go on that scaling journey and try and understand how you operate and who you need around you to be successful, because you can't do it on your own. You can't be everything. So that's one of the biggest learns, I think. So finally, thank you, Tom, for joining today. Been awesome. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, James. Been awesome being here.
Yeah, it's great. And thanks to the listeners. And I hope you feel slightly wiser this Wednesday as a result. So take care all. Cheers.